It is Monday, April 21st, and major news is breaking this week on President Trump's aggressive tariff policies. As Trump nears the final stages of inking a new trade deal with the European Union, he is simultaneously turning up the heat on China. This weekend, the former president reignited tensions with Beijing, setting the stage for what analysts expect to be a strong retaliation from the Chinese government in the days ahead. This comes right after Trump's high-profile comments about the COVID-19 lab leak theory, which has only escalated the friction. At the same time, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell is facing mounting pressure from Trump, who is actively seeking his replacement. The conflict between Trump and Powell isn't new, but it's gaining fresh urgency as economic concerns rise. We'll also explore the most recent polling data that shows Democratic leadership hitting its lowest point in history, plus other major stories from across the country. But first, thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Your support really helps keep this channel going and ensures you don't miss these critical updates. To understand today's developments, we need to go back 6 years to August 2019. That's when former New York Federal Reserve President Bill Dudley wrote a provocative op-ed in Bloomberg, advising the Fed to avoid helping President Trump during his trade war with China. Dudley argued that the Fed should not provide economic stimulus that would offset the effects of Trump's tariffs. Fast forward 6 years, and we are witnessing a similar pattern of political maneuvering. The Federal Reserve, under Powell's leadership, is being accused of letting personal grievances cloud its judgment. Trump believes Powell holds a grudge and is using his position to undermine the administration's efforts. The Federal Reserve's role is simple in theory: maximize employment and maintain inflation around 2%. It is not supposed to interfere in trade policy or become a tool for political power plays. And yet, Democrats are allegedly using Powell as a pawn in an information war, bolstered by their media allies who continue to fan the flames of economic panic. For instance, The Atlantic recently ran a story comparing Trump's tariff policies to the destructive economic strategies of Adolf Hitler. It's the kind of fear-mongering that's designed to shock and stir public emotion, rather than promote reasoned analysis. Over the weekend, MSNBC aired segments that portrayed Trump's economic policies as catastrophic. David Frum, writing for The Atlantic, suggested that Trump's tariffs were wreaking havoc on the economy and that Powell was being set up as the scapegoat. In response, Trump publicly criticized Powell and floated the idea of firing him. The mainstream media quickly reminded everyone that the Fed chair is supposed to serve a 10-year term and cannot be fired without cause, a protection that's been in place since 1951 to shield the central bank from political interference. Still, Trump was undeterred. He pointed to Powell's failure to react swiftly to economic signals, claiming that his delay in lowering interest rates had harmed the economy. Trump cited falling oil and grocery prices, as well as rising revenues from tariffs, as evidence that Powell was not fulfilling his duties. He claimed Powell was always too late and wrong, and suggested that the time had come for a change at the top. This feud came to a head in public when a reporter asked Powell if he would resign if Trump requested it. Powell simply replied, "No," but Trump, characteristically bold, retorted that Powell would be gone if he wanted him gone. He said Powell's performance had been unacceptable and that he was prepared to remove him if necessary. Why is this so critical now? Because the trade war is accelerating. While other central banks are adapting, the U.S. Fed is standing still. The European Central Bank, for instance, recently announced another rate cut, explaining that tariffs are deflationary and the traditional rules no longer apply. China's central bank has also stepped in with massive stimulus packages, 7 straight days of intervention to stabilize markets. In contrast, the U.S. Federal Reserve has done nothing. Trump took to social media to vent his frustrations. He posted that Powell's lack of action was a serious failure, especially when other countries were taking steps to protect their economies. He argued that Powell should have lowered interest rates long ago and that his recent reports were a mess. Trump even called for Powell's termination, stating bluntly that it cannot come fast enough. This wasn't just rhetoric. Trump seems ready to act. Legally, the president can remove the Fed chair for cause, and Trump believes Powell's failure to lower rates constitutes such a cause. Behind the scenes, preparations are already underway for a potential transition in leadership. Meanwhile, the trade situation with China continues to escalate. Chinese President Xi Jinping signaled last week that he was open to negotiations, but only if the U.S. stopped the anti-Chinese Communist Party rhetoric. Instead, Trump launched COVID.gov, which prominently highlights new evidence supporting the theory that the pandemic originated from a lab leak in China. This strategic move was clearly aimed at putting pressure on Beijing. The Chinese government, deeply concerned about optics, was rattled. The Epoch Times reported that Trump's 145% tariffs were causing major disruptions in Chinese factories, some of which have become ghost towns. Workers were reportedly being sent on vacations they didn't ask for, and some companies were abandoning shipments mid-transit to avoid hefty tariffs. Chinese bloggers even began criticizing their own government's fight-at-all-costs messaging, realizing that ordinary citizens were bearing the brunt of the economic pain. In anticipation of deteriorating talks, the White House formed a high-level task force led by J.D. Vance and Scott Bessent. Their job: to manage potential supply chain disruptions, particularly in areas like medicine, electronics, and rare earth minerals. Trump emphasized that while China may want a deal, the U.S. is ready with a Plan B if negotiations break down. One area that deserves particular attention is the rare earth and critical minerals sector. Just last week, Beijing announced it would cut off the U.S. from rare earth exports, including vital materials like magnets and ball bearings. These materials are essential for a range of industries, from defense to tech. Trump has responded by rapidly ramping up domestic mining efforts. His administration is finalizing a mineral deal with Ukraine, expected to be signed this Thursday. He's also making moves in Greenland and recently signed an executive order under the Defense Production Act to expedite mining permits for critical minerals such as copper and uranium. Federal lands are now being prioritized for extraction. This is a bold and fast-paced reshoring effort that aims to end China's near monopoly on critical minerals. Trump has made it clear: America will no longer be dependent on foreign powers for its industrial base. The investment opportunities here are substantial. One example is American Tungsten Corp., U.S. ticker DMRF. With 0 operational tungsten mines currently active in the U.S., the company has a unique opportunity. China controls approximately 70% of global rare earth production and up to 90% of processing capacity, creating a dangerous chokehold on global supply chains. American Tungsten aims to become the first domestic producer in over a decade. Their primary asset, located in Idaho, was once the 5th largest tungsten mine in the country. The U.S. Department of Energy classifies tungsten as a critical material valued for its durability, strength, and the highest melting point of any metal. Tungsten is used in a variety of high-heat, high-stress applications, including military-grade materials that can even break apart bullets. The company is now advancing partnerships with the U.S. Department of Defense and the Department of Energy to strengthen America's supply chain resilience. That wraps up today's news breakdown. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share if you found this helpful. We'll see you next time.